The city was alive with noise, light, and color. Yet 3 alien widows stood silent at the edge of the marketplace. They held small wooden signs in their hands, written in rough letters. "Please, we need work." No one looked at them kindly. Crowds passed quickly. Some laughed, others whispered, some even threw small stones near their feet. Everyone knew the story of these widows. They were called cursed, they were called unlucky. And in this city, no one wanted to take such risk. The widows' names were Rena, Solari, and Myra. Their eyes told different stories, but all had the same pain. Each had lost a husband in the same strange accident, a factory explosion at the human colony on the edge of space. People whispered that the husbands had angered something powerful, and their deaths were punishment. Now their wives carried the shadow of that punishment. Rena looked at the crowd, her face hard. She did not cry anymore. Her tears had already dried months ago. Solari tried to hide her fear. She was young and still hoped someone kind would help. Myra held her child's hand. The child was too small to understand why no one wanted to help them. As the sun dropped lower, the widows felt their hunger. "They had not eaten since yesterday," Rena whispered. "No one will take us today either." Her voice was bitter. Solari looked at her and said, "We cannot give up. Tomorrow may be different." But her words were weak. A group of alien merchants walked by. One merchant spat on the ground and said, "Stay away from them, they bring only bad luck." Another nodded, "Even their shadow will ruin your business." The widows lowered their heads. They had heard these words too many times. Night began to fall. The lights of the city glowed like stars, but the widows felt only darkness. They thought about leaving, about walking into the desert beyond the city. Perhaps dying would be easier than living with shame. Myra's child tugged her hand and whispered, "Mother, I am hungry." Myra's heart broke. Then a voice spoke from behind them, calm, steady, different from the rest. "I will hire you." The widows turned. In front of them stood a human. His clothes were simple. His face was rough with dust, but his eyes were clear and firm. His name was Daniel, but the widows did not know it yet. The crowd froze. Everyone watched with wide eyes. A murmur spread through the street. "A human?" Someone hissed. "He wants them." "Foolish, he does not know the curse," and another said. Daniel ignored the whispers. He looked directly at the widows. "I need workers. My workshop needs hands. If you want, come with me." Rena's heart beat fast. She did not trust kindness anymore. "Why us?" she asked. Her voice was sharp. "You know who we are, you know what people say." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know, but I do not believe in curses. I believe in work, and I believe in people." The widows looked at each other. Solari's eyes filled with tears. Myra held her child close. Rena narrowed her eyes. "If we go with you, your life may be ruined too," she warned. Daniel gave a small smile. "Then let it be ruined. Better ruined with honesty than safe with lies." The crowd gasped. No one had ever spoken like this. The marketplace fell silent. Even the merchants had no words. A human had broken the unwritten law. He had chosen the cursed widows. Slowly, Myra stepped forward. Her child clung to her side. "We will come," she said softly. Solari followed, whispering, "Thank you." Rena was the last. She studied Daniel for a long moment, then finally nodded. "We will work, but do not expect us to bow to pity." Daniel's voice was calm. "I do not want pity. I want strength." The widows walked beside him, leaving the market for the first time with hope. Behind them, the whispers grew louder. Some cursed them, some cursed Daniel. But some voices were curious. "What if the human is right?" one said. "What if the widows are not cursed but brave?" The widows did not hear. Their hearts were too full. For the first time since their husbands' deaths, someone had seen them not as a curse, but as people. Yet, in the shadows above the marketplace, a pair of glowing eyes watched silently. The figure whispered into a communicator. "The widows have found protection. The human has taken them in." A pause. Then a cold answer crackled back. "Then the human must pay." The night swallowed the city. But the story of the widows had just begun. The next morning, the city buzzed with gossip. People could not stop talking about what they had seen the night before, a human hiring the cursed widows. Unthinkable, yet it had happened, and the story spread through streets and markets like fire. At the edge of the colony, Daniel walked slowly with the three widows following behind him. Myra carried her small child. Solari kept looking over her shoulder as if afraid someone would attack. Rena walked with her head high but her eyes sharp. She trusted no one yet, not even Daniel. The road grew quieter as they left the busy heart of the city. They passed broken buildings and empty storage halls. Finally, Daniel stopped at a small workshop. The metal walls were scratched, the roof patched with old sheets. Smoke rose from a crooked chimney. It was not much, but it was alive. "This is my place," Daniel said simply. He opened the door and waved for them to enter. Inside, the widow saw machines, tools, and broken parts scattered on benches. The air smelled of oil and fire. It was messy, but it felt warm. Unlike the cold streets where they had begged for days, this place felt different. "You fix machines?" Solari asked softly. Daniel nodded. "I repair, I build, I trade, but I cannot do it alone anymore. That is why I need you." Rena crossed her arms. "You need us or you pity us?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "No pity, I told you work is work, you can learn and I can teach." The widows exchanged glances. For the first time, someone spoke to them not like broken glass but like strong stone. Myra's child walked to a bench and touched a shiny gear. The child laughed softly. The sound was small, but it warmed the air. Daniel showed them tasks. Simple things at first. "Pick the good parts from the junk pile," he said. "Keep wires clean. Wash the tools. After use." The widows obeyed. Their hands moved carefully. They had never touched machines before, but their fingers learned quickly. As the day passed, something strange happened. For months they had lived with only silence, shame, and hunger. But inside the workshop, time passed fast. Solari laughed once when she dropped a tool. Myra hummed a song to her child while cleaning gears. Even Rena, who was always hard, began to focus like she had a purpose again. Outside, people gathered. They whispered through the windows. "Look, the widows are inside." The human really let them in. Foolish, his business will die, but no one dared step closer. By evening, Daniel lit a small lamp. The widows sat tired but strangely alive. He gave them bread and soup, simple food, but to them it felt like a feast. Solari's hands trembled as she held the bowl. Myra whispered thanks with wet eyes. Rena ate in silence, but her eyes studied Daniel. "Why?" she asked suddenly. Daniel looked at her. "Why risk yourself for us?" Daniel leaned back. His face was calm, but his eyes deep. "Because I know what it feels like when no one gives you a chance," he said. His voice carried weight. "When I first came to this colony, they called me useless too. They said humans don't belong here. I worked until my hands bled. I built this place with nothing. If I was given no chance, I would be dead. So I will not let you be thrown away." The widows went silent. His words were not soft like comfort. They were heavy like truth. Something stirred in their hearts. That night, Daniel gave them mats to sleep in a corner of the workshop. Myra's child curled beside her. Solari whispered a prayer. Rena stayed. Awake longest, she kept staring at the walls, wondering if this human was truly different or if it was another trap. But outside, danger was moving. In the darkness beyond the workshop, a figure stood on the rooftops. His mask glowed faint red, his eyes locked on the little workshop. He spoke into a communicator. "The widows are with the human now," a voice answered, cold and sharp. He should have left them to die. The masked figure pulled a blade from his belt. The metal shimmered under the moon. "Shall I cut the thread now?" he asked. The cold voice replied, "Not yet. Let them believe they are safe, then strike." The figure melted into the shadows, waiting. Inside, Daniel closed his eyes, not knowing the storm that was about to fall on his workshop. The widows slept, at last with tired hope, their first night under a roof after weeks in the street. But above them, danger watched, silent and patient. The city had called them cursed. The human had called them workers. Yet fate had called them something else. Entirely targets. The night outside was quiet, but inside Daniel's workshop, strange sounds began to stir. A slow creak of wood, a faint scratch against the metal wall. The widows were asleep on their mats, Myra's child curled in her arms, Solari breathing, softly, Rena pretending to sleep but listening to every sound. Rena's eyes snapped open. She heard it again, the sound of footsteps, soft but heavy, moving across the roof. Her hand reached for a tool lying beside her mat. She did not trust easily, and now her instinct screamed. Suddenly the lamp inside flickered. The shadows in the room stretched long and sharp. Daniel woke quickly. He sat up, his eyes moving toward the door. Years of living alone had made him cautious. He could feel danger in the air like smoke before fire. The door rattled once, then swung open with a sharp crash. A masked figure stepped inside. His armor was black, his mask glowing faint red lines. In his hand was a curved blade. His voice was rough as stone. "You should not have hired them. Human." The widows jumped to their feet. Solari gasped, pulling Myra's child close. Rena held the heavy wrench she had grabbed. Daniel stood firm, his hand gripping a long iron rod. He asked, "Who sent you?" The masked figure tilted his head. "The company does not forgive. The widows were meant to starve, meant to vanish. You broke the order." His voice was filled with cold certainty. Rena shouted, "It was you! You killed our husbands." The masked figure laughed bitterly. "Your husbands discovered secrets they should not have touched. Now you carry their shame, and this human carries their curse." The widows trembled, but Daniel stepped forward. "If you want them, you'll have to go through me." The intruder moved like a shadow. His blade slashed. Daniel blocked with his iron rod. The clash rang loud in the workshop. Sparks flew. Rena leapt forward swinging, her wrench. The blow struck the attacker's shoulder. He stumbled but did not fall. His mask glowed brighter, his rage rising. Solari pulled Myra and the child toward the back of the workshop. "Hide!" she cried. Myra's tears filled her eyes, but she obeyed. The child whimpered, covering his ears from the noise of steel. The masked figure attacked again. Daniel gritted his teeth, fighting with all his strength. He had no training, but his arms were strong from years of work. The widows joined in, striking with whatever tools they could find. For the first time, they were not weak beggars. They were fighters, but the enemy was skilled. His blade cut deep into the workbench, slicing. Wood like paper, his movements were fast, precise, deadly. He shouted, "You cannot protect them, no one can." Daniel swung hard, knocking the blade aside for a moment. He shouted back, "Then let's see if curses bleed." His rod smashed against the attacker's mask. Cracks spread across the glowing surface. For the first time, the enemy staggered. The widows saw their chance. Rena struck with her wrench. Solari threw a heavy gear. Myra even hurled a wooden box. Together, their courage pushed the enemy back toward the open door. The masked figure hissed, his voice no longer calm. "You are fools. You fight now, but you will all die soon." He leapt backward into the night. His figure vanished into the shadows, but his laughter echoed in the air. Before leaving, he tossed a small metal disc onto the floor. Daniel rushed to grab it, but the attacker was already gone. The disc glowed with a red light. A recorded message played, the same cold voice from before spoke. "The company does not forgive traitors. The widows are marked, the human is marked, none of you will escape." The disc burned out, leaving only smoke. The widows stood shaking. Solari hugged Myra's child tight. Myra whispered, "It is true they killed our husbands, now they come for us." Rena clenched her fists. "Then we will fight." Daniel breathed heavily, his arm bleeding from a shallow cut. He looked at the widows. "Now you see. This is bigger than just finding work. This is war." The widows looked at him with fear, and also with something else, hope. For the first time, someone stood with them against the dark, but outside, in the silent streets, more shadows moved. The masked figure was not alone. He knelt before a tall man dressed in silver armor. The Tall man's eyes were cruel. The human resists? He asked. The masked figure nodded. Yes, but they cannot resist long. The tall man smiled coldly. Then let them play their little game. Soon we will crush them all. And when we do, the whole colony will learn what happens to those who defy the company. The stars above the city shone bright, but for Daniel and the widows the night had just grown darker. The workshop was no longer a safe place. Every wall seemed thinner. Every shadow seemed alive. The widows sat together, still shaken from the attack. Daniel's arm was bandaged with cloth. His eyes were tired but sharp. He paced the floor, his mind heavy with questions. Why would they come in the night? Solari asked softly. Why not just kill us in the streets like they killed our husbands? Daniel stopped and looked at her. Because they fear something. They fear truth. Rena frowned. Truth? What truth could three widows carry? Daniel walked to a locked chest in the corner. He pulled out an old black case. Its surface was scratched, marked with dust. The widows leaned forward. Daniel placed the case on the bench and slowly opened it. Inside were small data chips, hidden under layers of cloth. These, Daniel said, his voice low. I found them in the ruins of the factory where your husbands died. They were hidden in the machines. Someone wanted them destroyed, but I kept them. The widows stared in silence. Solari whispered, What is on them? Daniel inserted one chip into a rusty console. The screen flickered, then words appeared. Reports, numbers, secret orders. Myra gasped. Her eyes caught the symbol in the corner of the page, the mark of the company. Daniel explained, Your husbands were not killed by accident. They found evidence of corruption. They discovered the company was stealing resources, lying to the colony. When they refused to stay silent, the company silenced them. The widows felt their hearts twist. Myra began to cry softly, holding her child close. Solari covered her mouth, unable to speak. Rena's hands shook with rage. So they were murdered, and now we are punished for their courage. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes, that is why no one will hire you. The company made sure of it. They spread lies, called you cursed, so people would fear you. It was easier to destroy your names than to let you rise. For a long moment the workshop was silent. The widows sat heavy with grief and anger. Then Solari whispered, What do we do now? Daniel looked at her with steady eyes. We fight. We find the rest of the truth and we show it to everyone. The widows exchanged glances. Fear still lived in their hearts, but something else began to grow. A small fire of defiance. For the first time they were not only victims, they had a chance to strike back. Daniel pulled another chip from the case. There may be more. Somewhere out there a full record exists, a complete file of what the company has done. If we find it, we can expose them. Rena leaned forward, her voice sharp. Then where? Do we look? Before Daniel could answer, a soft beeping came from the corner. A small device hidden under his desk glowed red. Daniel rushed to it. His face grew tense. It is a signal. Someone is tracking us. The widows froze. They found us already? Solari asked in fear. Daniel shook his head. No. This is different. It is a warning. He tapped the device. A shaky voice spilled into the air, distorted but clear enough. They know you have the files, the voice said. They will come, again stronger this time. You must leave the workshop. Go underground. Find the memory core. It holds the truth. The device sparked and died. The message ended. The widows stared, confused and frightened. Who was that? Myra asked. Daniel shook his head. Someone who still fights against the company. Maybe a friend of your husband's, maybe someone else. But they gave us a path. Rena's eyes narrowed. The memory core. Where is it? Daniel opened a map on the console. He pointed to the dark tunnels beneath the city. Here, deep underground. An old storage sector, long abandoned. That is where we must go. The widows felt a cold shiver. Underground tunnels were dangerous, filled with rust and forgotten machines. But they also felt something new: purpose. As night fell again, Daniel packed tools, wires, and a small weapon. The widows prepared what little they had. Myra wrapped her child in cloth. Solari whispered prayers for strength. Rena sharpened a piece of scrap metal like a blade. They were no longer beggars. They were survivors on a mission. But outside, in the city, the company was already moving. Agents dressed in black armor spread through the streets. Their voices, carried through radios. Search every corner, find the human, find the widows. At the center of it all, in a tall glass tower, a man in silver armor stood before a wide window. He watched the city lights with cold eyes. A servant bowed before him. They escaped the attack, the servant said. The man's lips curled into a cruel smile. Good, he said. Let them run. Let them dig. The deeper they go, the harder they will fall. He turned away, his voice like ice. When they find the memory core, we will take it from their dead hands. The servant bowed again. Yes, Commander. The tower lights glowed like fire against the night sky, and somewhere far below, Daniel and the widows stepped into the shadows, unaware that every step forward was already watched, already planned. The truth was close, but so was the trap. The alarms began just before sunrise. A deep metallic wail spread across the city, echoing through every street and alley. The widows woke at once, their hearts pounding. Daniel was already on his feet, packing the last of his tools into a worn bag. They are searching, he said quickly. The company is moving. They know we are still alive. Outside, heavy boots struck the ground. Black-armored agents marched in lines. Their visors glowed red as they scanned doors and windows. The streets filled with shouts, "Open your doors!" By order of the company. Solari clutched Myra's child close. They will find us, she whispered in fear. Daniel shook his head. Not if we move now. He pulled open a trapdoor hidden under the workbench. A ladder led down into darkness. The smell of dust and rust rose up. The tunnels will hide us, hurry. The widows obeyed. Myra descended first with her child, then Solari, then Rena. Daniel followed last, closing the trapdoor above them. The sound of boots grew louder. A moment later, the workshop door was kicked open. Agents stormed inside, but the place was already empty. Down below, the tunnels stretched like veins beneath the city. Old pipes dripped water. The walls echoed. With every step, their lantern cast long shadows. Solari whispered, "How far do we go?" Daniel replied, "Until we reach the storage sector. The memory core should be there. It is our only chance." They walked fast, but the tunnels were dangerous. Rusty bridges crossed deep pits. Broken wires sparked with faint light. Myra's child cried softly. Rena whispered for silence. Every sound may give us away. But even as they moved, a faint hum grew behind them. Daniel stopped, his face tense. "Drones," he said. They sent drones into the tunnels. The widows turned. Glowing red eyes appeared in the darkness. Small machines floated forward, spinning blades whirring. Their voices spoke in metallic tones. "Targets located, do not resist. Run." Daniel shouted. The chase began. Their footsteps pounded against the metal ground. The drones fired beams of light, cutting through pipes. Steam filled the air. The widows screamed but kept running. Daniel swung a metal rod, smashing one drone. Sparks exploded, but more followed. Rena grabbed a loose pipe and swung hard, knocking another drone into the wall. Solari threw a rock, breaking its lens. Myra shielded her child as Daniel pulled her forward. The tunnels twisted, leading into deeper darkness. Daniel checked the map on his console. "This way," he yelled. They turned sharply into a narrow passage. The walls shook as drones slammed against them. At last, they burst into a large chamber. Rusted machines stood like dead giants. Broken conveyor belts stretched into the dark. This was the abandoned storage sector. Daniel pointed. There, the core should be in that vault. The widows rushed forward, but the drones entered too. A battle filled the chamber. Metal clashed, sparks flew. The widows fought with wild courage. Rena struck with rage. Solari screamed as she pushed a machine onto a drone, crushing it. Even Myra threw sharp scraps at their attackers. Daniel worked quickly at the vault. His hands flew across the old panel, almost open. he shouted. The drones closed in. One beam struck near Myra, almost hitting her child. She fell to her knees, but Rena pulled her up. Stand. We are not dying here. At last, the vault opened with a grinding sound. Inside lay a small glowing sphere. Pulsing with blue light, Daniel grabbed it. This is the memory core, he said. The truth is inside here. But before they could escape, a deep voice echoed through the chamber. You should not have found that. From the shadows stepped the tall man in silver armor. His presence filled the room with cold fear. Dozens of agents stood behind him, weapons raised. The widows froze. Daniel held the core tight against his chest. The commander's eyes glowed with cruel fire. Run all you like, he said. The chase ends here. The widows looked at Daniel. Their faces pale but defiant, Solari whispered. What do we do? Daniel's jaw tightened. His voice was steady. We fight. We protect the truth. The agents stepped forward, surrounding them. The commander smiled coldly. Good fight, and then fall. Just like your husbands. The widows' hearts filled. With both terror and rage, their blood boiled. The memory of their lost husbands burned in their minds. The chamber trembled with the sound of boots, blades, and approaching death. The chase had ended, but the real battle was about to begin. The chamber was filled with silence, broken only by the sound of the glowing core pulsing in Daniel's hands. The silver-armored commander watched with cold eyes, his agents standing like statues behind him. The widows stood in front of Daniel, their bodies shaking but their faces hard with defiance. Give me the core, the commander ordered. His voice was low but sharp like a blade. It does not belong to you. Daniel shook his head. It belongs to the truth. The commander smiled cruelly. He lifted a hand, and his agents aimed their weapons. The widows gasped. Myra held her child close. Solari whispered a prayer. Rena clenched her fists, ready to die fighting. Then, before the commander could give the order, the memory core flickered. Its blue light brightened, filling the chamber with sudden glow. A sound rose, static, then voices. The widows froze. Their hearts trembled. The voices were familiar, warm, and painful. It was the voices of their husbands. Rena. If you hear this, know we tried to stop them, one voice said, breaking through the static. Solari, forgive me. They will call us traitors, but we did this for you, for the children, another whispered. Myra, my love, they will lie about us. Do not believe them. The company cannot be trusted. Tears filled the widow's eyes. The chamber echoed with the voices of the dead, broken and real. The agents shifted uncomfortably. Even they felt the weight of the words. Daniel held the core high. The images appeared now, holograms of the final moments, the husbands, working late in the factory, discovering hidden shipments, secret messages, a sudden explosion tearing through the walls, the company's symbol flashing across their screens before the flames consumed them. The widows fell to their knees, crying but also burning with anger. They had begged for work. They had been cursed by their own people. But now the truth was alive before their eyes. Their husbands were not weak. They were brave men who gave their lives for honesty. The commander's face twisted with rage. Turn it off, he shouted. Destroy it. His agents rushed forward. Daniel swung his rod, knocking one aside. Rena struck another with her makeshift blade. Solari hurled a heavy gear at a third. Myra, tears streaming down her face, shielded her child and screamed, You will not take them again. The core glowed brighter. More recordings poured out. They plan to starve the colonies, one husband's voice said. They steal what is meant for the people. They want to control every world. Another voice warned. The agents hesitated. Some lowered their weapons, whispering, Is this true? The commander roared, Silence! They are lies! But the proof burned in the air, undeniable. Daniel shouted above the chaos, Do you hear them? These men died for the truth. Are you going to let the company bury it? The widows rose again. Their grief now fury. Rena's voice was strong. We are not cursed. We are widows of the brave, and we will not bow. They fought harder than ever, striking with desperate strength. The chamber shook with the sound of battle. Sparks flew, shouts echoed. The truth and the lie clashed in the same room, but the commander was not finished. His eyes blazed. He drew his own weapon, a long blade glowing with silver light. He moved like a storm, striking Daniel across the chest. Daniel fell back with a cry, the core nearly slipping from his hands. The widows screamed, rushing to protect him. The commander raised his blade again. "The truth dies tonight," he hissed. But before he could strike, the core pulsed one last time. A deep voice filled the chamber, louder than all others. "If you are hearing this, it means we are dead. But it also means you are alive. Do not stop. Do not run. Fight for us." It was the united voice of all three husbands together. The widows' hearts blazed with fire. They stood in front of Daniel, blocking the commander's path. Solari shouted, "We will fight," Myra screamed. "For them!" Rena growled, "For the truth." The commander stepped back for the first time, his eyes narrowing. "Then die with your truth," he said coldly. His agents prepared again, this time with deadly intent. Daniel struggled to his feet, clutching, the core tight. His voice was weak but steady. "Then we fight together." The chamber filled with fire, light, and screams. But above it all, the voices of the dead echoed, guiding them, reminding them, giving them strength, and somewhere deep, in the city, in hidden rooms where the company leaders watched, alarms began to ring. The truth was not silent anymore. It was spreading, carried by the core's signal, leaking into the colony's network. The commander's eyes widened as he realized the danger. The truth was already out. The people would soon know. He raised his blade again, shouting, "Then, I will cut you down before the colony hears it all." But the widow stood unbroken, faces lit by both grief and fire, the voices of the dead still burning in their ears. The battle for truth had begun, and there would be no turning back. The chamber shook with the clash of steel and the hum of weapons. Sparks lit the dark like falling stars. The widows fought with bare hands, with broken tools, with desperate courage. Daniel held the glowing core against his chest, every heartbeat, echoing the voices of the dead. The commander's blade sliced through the air. His strikes were fast, cruel, merciless. "You cannot win," he snarled. "You are nothing, beggars, widows, an outsider human." But Rena blocked his strike with her scrap blade, her arms trembling yet unbroken. "We are not nothing," she growled. "We are survivors." Solari threw a heavy gear that smashed against an agent's helmet. Myra shielded her child while swinging a jagged rod at another. Daniel staggered but stood tall, his voice cut through the chaos. "You want to bury truth with fear, but truth does not die," the commander roared. He lunged, blade raised to strike Daniel. But Rena leapt in front, the weapon slashing across her arm. She screamed but did not fall. "You will not touch him," she shouted. Daniel's face burned with fury. He raised the iron rod and slammed it into the commander's mask. The silver cracked. A spray of sparks burst out. For the first time, the commander's face was revealed. Cold eyes, twisted with rage, a scar running across his cheek. "You think this changes anything?" the commander hissed. He waved his hand and more agents stormed into the chamber. Their numbers filled every corner. The widows gasped. Solari whispered, "We cannot fight them all." Daniel's grip tightened on the core. His voice was steady. "We don't need to fight them all, we just need to show the truth." He raised the glowing sphere high. The voices of the dead husbands echoed louder, filling the chamber. The holograms projected into the air. Corruption, theft, secret executions. Company leaders laughing as they signed death orders. The entire chamber lit with evidence. Undeniable and clear. But it was not just in the chamber. The signal spread across the colony, into the homes, the streets, the markets. Every screen flickered with the truth. Every voice carried the recordings. Citizens stopped in their tracks. Merchants dropped their goods. Workers froze at their stations. The widows' husbands spoke to the entire colony. "We died for the truth. Do not let them silence it." The crowd outside the tower began to roar. "The company lied. They killed them. Justice!" The commander's face darkened. "No!" he screamed. He charged at Daniel, blade. Glowing with fury, Daniel stepped forward, his voice thundered. "Humans do not fear curses, we do not fear lies, we stand." He swung the iron rod with all his strength. It struck the commander's chest, sending him crashing against the wall. The blade clattered to the ground. The widows rushed in. Rena's blade struck deep into his armor. Solari smashed a gear against. "His mask!" Myra screamed as she slammed the rod down again and again. The commander fell to his knees, defeated. The agents froze. They looked at the widows, at Daniel, at the glowing core. Some dropped their weapons. Some turned and fled. The power of fear was broken. Outside, the colony erupted. Citizens marched on the company towers, tearing down the banners, shouting the truth. Soldiers laid down their arms, refusing to fight against their own people. The lie had ended. Daniel lowered the core, his body shaking with exhaustion. The widows stood around him, their faces dirty, bleeding, but filled with fire. Myra's child clung to her leg, safe, alive. "It is over," Solari whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No, it has only begun, but now you are no longer cursed. You are free." The widows looked at him with tears in their eyes. Rena said quietly, "We were nothing before you. No one wanted us. Not even for a job, but you saw us." Daniel smiled faintly. "I saw people, not curses." The chamber grew quiet. The war outside raged on. But inside, something greater had happened. 3 widows had stood against fear, and a human had stood with them. Weeks later, the colony was different. The company's leaders were gone, their crimes exposed. The widows worked openly in Daniel's workshop, repairing machines, building new tools for the people. No one spat at them anymore. No one whispered curse. Instead, people nodded with respect when they passed. Myra's child laughed freely, running between the benches. Solari hummed as she worked. Rena even smiled sometimes, though she still carried her strength like armor. Daniel stood at the door, watching the rising sun. His arms scarred from the battle, his eyes tired but proud. He whispered to himself, "Humans don't believe in curses, we believe in second chances." The widows joined him. Standing shoulder to shoulder behind them, the workshop glowed with life. Ahead of them, the colony shone with hope. The voices of the dead were quiet now, but their message lived on, carried by those who survived. And so, the story of the widows and the human did not end with death or fear, but with truth, courage, and a new beginning. The human had given them a chance, and together, they had given the colony freedom.